the keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. Going to be talking about running backs and tight end depth chart today. And yeah, I've been keeping it somewhat singular when talking about certain position groups. But when you look at the depth at running back and tight end, you kind of have to put them together because there's just not that many players at the position. You just don't have that many players on your roster. But there are some interesting battles that are going to take place because I think there's a lot to be decided still when talking about depth. Plus, the 49ers have added some unique talent along the way at both positions. This is one of those things that's interesting about the 49ers offense is how Kyle Shanahan plans to build it. Whether that's adding a speed element to the running back position like he did last year with Isaac Guerendo, or that's adding a veteran player that they just brought back in Ross Dwelley at the tight end position. There are a mixture of veterans and young players at each one of these positions. And whether it's Bobby T or, one of these other coaches, they're continuing to try to develop these players into becoming the best possible guy that they can find. But the depth chart is going to be unique the way it comes into training camp and then how it exits training camp. And that's what we're working on. We're working on what this is going to look like going into training camp so we can be set up when it happens. We know exactly how these guys are slotted. Then we can start to see the movement as we work through training camp, the preseason. Who's going to move up? Where is a guy like Corey Kiner going to end up in the running back room? Is he going to be in the top 4 and make this 49ers roster? Or is he going to be a guy that could potentially, the 49ers are hoping, get to the practice squad? I think that's going to be interesting. We haven't seen 49ers running backs really make it to the practice squad recently when you're talking about young players. Cody Schrader, last year, a guy the 49ers were really high on coming in as an undrafted free agent, and as preseason ended and they had to make their final cuts, the Rams, of course, poached him on the waiver wire. They picked him up, and he was with the football team the entire year. So that is a possible situation Corey Kiner could find himself in. But along the way, they've got an opportunity for Corey Kiner to make this team. And I think you look at the tight end position, and there's a lot of young guys who haven't really showed anything yet. They're going to be competing as well. So that's what we're going to get into in this episode. We're going to talk about running backs. We're going to talk about tight ends. And we're going to get the depth chart set for training camp. And then we're going to get the depth chart set for what we think is going to be coming out of the preseason and training camp headed into the regular season. So we can kind of get an idea of which players are in the mix, who's competing for a roster spot, and who's potentially on the roster bubble. Those are some things we've been going through as we go through the depth chart. Just talk about the players that are not just frontline starters, but are at the end of the roster as well. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Belief Network. It's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcast. And thanks so much to everyone that's crossing over and doing both. I really appreciate you. And I do see some of the comments. I'm going to try to take some time. My work schedule's been a little bit crazy, but I'm going to try to take some time and go through everyone's comments. So I did see them, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you for everything you do for the channel. And of course, if you are into betting, and this is a time where you can bet on the NBA Finals and more, bet with Bet Online. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. With baseball season in full swing, we're deep into the NBA and NHL finals, and Bet Online has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. We keep the dog days of summer rolling with the largest selection of odds on everything, with updated odds on MLB, UFC, and boxing to tennis and NFL futures. BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. So I want to start talking running back because I think running back is an interesting position. We know who the top guys are at the position. Number one, it's Christian McCaffrey. And with Christian McCaffrey comes a little bit of a question mark. We didn't have this question mark going into 2023. We didn't have this question mark going into 2024 because we felt McCaffrey was just going to build on what he did in 2023 and 2024. But 2024 was marred by injury. McCaffrey had the problems with both Achilles and Achilles tendonitis that really hindered him. And when he did come back, even though he did make some plays, it didn't look like the Christian McCaffrey that we were used to seeing in 2023, explosive, dynamic, making everything happen, improving the 49ers red zone offense to a 68% clip of scoring touchdowns when in the red zone. He just didn't look like that guy anymore. And I mean, we all would understand if you're dealing with leg injuries, especially Achilles injuries, it's going to slow you down. That does not feel good. That does not feel comfortable. And there's always the risk of having something happen to your Achilles and blowing an Achilles out, and that'll set you back over a year. So the 49ers needed to make sure they took some time with McCaffrey. They did. Then he suffers a different injury in the game in Buffalo, and that really ended his season. So what are we going to get from Christian McCaffrey? And depending on what you've heard so far, whether that's on X or other content creators or podcasters, they're talking about what does Christian McCaffrey look like? Some are saying he looks explosive, including John Lynch on 95.7 The Game said, yeah, Christian McCaffrey looks explosive. You got others saying he looks slow. I think from what we're all looking at, I think you could go either way with it. I think you could say, oh, yeah, he looks slow or he looks explosive, because I'm not sure Christian McCaffrey is always going full speed right now, because they are monitoring how much he's going to use explosion, use full speed throughout the entire process. There will be moments where he's going to go full speed, but he's saving a lot of those for the game. So there are videos out there where I think he's going 3/4 speed. There are videos out there where I've seen the explosion. So I think that we've got a player that's going to be way better than he was athletically last year. He looks more healthy. He looks more comfortable running. I do think he looks a lot better than the 2024 Christian McCaffrey we saw. But do we know exactly what we're going to get? No. We also don't know what we're going to get when it comes to his usage. We know that Bobby T and others have said McCaffrey wants to be on the field at all times. He wants to be out there making plays. And who doesn't want a competitor at the position to want to be out there at all times making plays for his football team? I think that is something that the 49ers definitely love in an attitude of a football player. But we've heard Kyle Shanahan say we have to save him from himself. So I think that we're going to see a little bit of a scaled back Christian McCaffrey this year. And with a scaled back Christian McCaffrey when it comes to reps, that's going to give opportunities to some other young players. And the 49ers continue to invest in young players in the draft. Now, with that being said, how much is a scaled back Christian McCaffrey? Is it 5%? Is it 10%? I don't think it's much more than that. I don't think there's just reps going around for everybody. But I think that there are times in the game where you could potentially rest Christian McCaffrey. So we've seen the 49ers do this. You start in the game, you get your number one guy going. And they did this with Elijah Mitchell when he was healthy and helping McCaffrey in 2022. You go back and you watch the way that they kind of used both of those guys together. Was McCaffrey started the game, he got the 49ers really going. Then they took a time in the second quarter, especially into the first quarter, early second quarter, where they gave reps to Elijah Mitchell. Now, Kyle Shanahan had a lot of trust in what Elijah Mitchell could do, so that's part of the reason. But it was a position in the game where you could take advantage of a backup running back, and I think that's what they could do in this game. That's why I'm saying there's more opportunity. And then Christian McCaffrey came back for the 4-minute offense or the 2-minute offense to the end out the first half. Then in the third quarter, they would go again with whoever the backup running back was that they wanted to get reps, and he would play a little bit of the third quarter before Christian McCaffrey came back and played the fourth quarter. This could ensure that you keep McCaffrey healthy for the stretch, but you play him at key times. Getting a good start in the first quarter, that's number one. Getting him out there for your 2-minute offense or your 4-minute offense, depending on what you need to do. You need to slow it down and score at the end of the half, have McCaffrey in. You need McCaffrey out there so you can run your 2-minute offense and be dynamic, have him in. But then in the third quarter, give an opportunity to the backup running back, allow McCaffrey a little bit more rest, and then get him out there for the fourth quarter where it's closing time. Now, there's also other elements and times you get McCaffrey out there. I'm not saying you just leave the other running back in the entire time. You got third down situation. Obviously, McCaffrey could be your guy. You're in the red zone. Obviously, put McCaffrey out there. So this is a way to get extra reps to extra players, and it's a method we've seen the 49ers use. But who's going to be that guy that comes in for Christian McCaffrey? There is no Elijah Mitchell. There is no guy that Bobby T and Kyle Shanahan are like, oh, yeah, I'm 100% comfortable with what this guy could do, right? Jordan Mason got shipped off, and I'm not even sure they were comfortable with him 100% of the time the way they were Elijah Mitchell. So now we've got to establish what this depth chart looks like behind Christian McCaffrey. First off, you have Isaac Guerendo. He was last year's draft pick in the fourth round, and he had some really big plays last year. The explosive speed was on display all throughout his rookie season. Now, he did deal with some injuries, and there's some things that set him back in training camp when you're talking hamstring, some things during the season as well. That's something to monitor. So far, it looks like he's extremely healthy. Looks like he's figured his body out. He worked out with Frank Gore during the offseason. Maybe that helped him a lot. So he's in the mix, of course, to be that guy. You drafted Jordan James out of Oregon. And Jordan James is a guy that really has some unique skill sets when it comes to the way he wins on short yardage and the way he wins in the red zone. 31 red zone touchdowns for Jordan James is phenomenal. This is a guy that understands how to find creases, understands how to fall forward, get extra yards, and just churn those legs and get into the end zone. So that's an element to the game that we love from a running back. You got to be able to finish. You got to be able to finish on 3rd and 1. You got to be able to finish on 4th and 1 or in the red zone, getting into the end zone for touchdowns, and running the football is going to be something important for the 49ers. But they said it's more than just that. When they went and watched his pro day up in Eugene, they saw a guy that was catching the ball fluidly. He was able to run good routes. They thought that there was more to Jordan James than just being able to run the ball in short yardage situations. They've also talked so many times about his vision, and his vision is really good. He's got good vision, but also his explosiveness when it comes to short areas, not long speed. He's not going to go Isaac Guerendo and break out and outrun everyone for a touchdown, but he's a guy that, hey, once he sees his hole, he can explode through. That 3-yard explosion allows him to get through the hole before it closes and get some extra yards. So that's something they really like about Jordan James. And then you've got Patrick Taylor. He was on the team last year. He helped in key situations when they needed him. He also helped on special teams. Then they have Israel Abanikanda. And Abanikanda was drafted by Robert Saleh with the New York Jets. And Abanikanda comes over. He was with Pitt in college, and he was a guy that's a definite scheme fit. This is somebody that I really liked coming out of Pitt. I felt like he was a scheme fit for the 49ers. And obviously, going to the Jets, he was a scheme fit. It's a guy that can catch the ball in the backfield pretty well, but he's got a ability to just cut and go. A little bit of a long strider, but fun to watch. I think he's going to be somebody interesting to watch throughout the process as Abanikanda gets out there. Let's see what he can do. And Coach Bobby T said, hey, this guy's got to get better every day. And that's something he's going to have to do. And then Corey Kiner, who we mentioned a little bit ago, which is basically a lot like Jordan James. Same speed, almost same build, same running style, a little bit different when it comes to explosion. Jordan James, more explosion and probably more dynamic out of the backfield catching the football. But a similar player. So these guys are both going to be in the mix. So let's put it together now. Let's get this depth chart for the 49ers completely lined out. And I think it's going to start with Isaac Guerendo. I do think Guerendo is going to be the number 2 behind Christian McCaffrey because he's been in this system already. He played it last year. In fact, he started games for the 49ers at running back, which gives him a huge head start on guys like Jordan James and guys like Corey Kiner, Abanikanda, and even Patrick Taylor, who's been around for a while, because he's got the explosiveness. He's got the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got more versatility. So I think he's the guy that makes the most sense behind McCaffrey. You want to line up Guerendo in the slot, he could do that. Is he going to run routes the way that Christian McCaffrey does? No, nobody does. There's not another Christian McCaffrey in this league. He's a complete unicorn. Even Saquon Barkley, he does it differently. Him and McCaffrey are not built the same. They don't run the same. They don't catch the ball the same. They're different in the dynamics in which they play with. So you're not going to get the same exact thing. But the strengths of Guerendo really do work for the 49ers. Number one, he can play on third down. You need to have McCaffrey out on third down. Garendo can go out there and be a threat when it comes to catching the football. We've seen him have some big plays last year. You need him to get a yard or two. He's a big running back who can run physically and get you a yard or two. I don't think he's as good a short yardage running back as I think they were hoping with that big body, but maybe that will come with the vision that he's gained throughout the season as he's got used to running within this 40 yards outside zone, inside zone scheme. He's got more of an understanding of where he's supposed to push to, when he's supposed to cut, and what the vision looks like as things start opening up. Patience followed by explosiveness. And so I think that those are some things that I believe that he can get a little bit better at. But I do think he's set up to be that guy behind Christian McCaffrey. I also feel like 1 year in pass protection, he will be better. And he was a guy that was thought of very highly coming out of Louisville, that he could be good at pass protection. Last year, it was a little spotty. There were moments he was good. There were moments where he struggled a little bit. So that's an area he needs to tighten up. But I think that they're going to feel the most comfortable with him. One other area he needs to shore up, because when the 49ers drafted, this was an area they really looked at, was fumbling the football. Garendo fumbled the ball a little bit too much, especially on special teams last year, but he can't turn over the football. You will go from a Kyle Shanahan favorite to a Kyle Shanahan doghouse real quick if you put the ball on the ground. So that's something Garendo needs to tighten up. But I love the explosiveness, the ability to catch the ball in the backfield. If the vision follows, Garendo could be a big-time player for the 49ers. And I like that 1-2 punch with him and Christian McCaffrey. Then I think the third guy is even early on, and this isn't always something that happens with rookies, and it could be at training camp. Patrick Taylor's a little bit ahead of Jordan James, but I think they're going to thrust Jordan James in there. The way that Elijah Mitchell moved up the depth chart really quickly in his rookie season, I think that's going to happen with Jordan James. And I think he is probably going in. He's probably going to get reps behind Patrick Taylor, but coming out, he's probably going to be ahead of Patrick Taylor. So I think that I'm going to put Jordan James in spot number 3. And I think he's going to have a skill set that the 49ers utilize in certain situations. I think when you get to 3rd and 1, instead of having Garendo out there on 3rd and 1, if you're going to run the ball, they could go Jordan James. I think 2nd and 1 especially, that's a good opportunity to allow the young guy to go run the ball. He doesn't fumble, but get Christian McCaffrey out for a blow, let Jordan James go get a first down, then bring him out, put in, Christian McCaffrey out there after that. Also, in the red zone, sometimes you get situations where Christian McCaffrey gets a big explosive run or a big explosive play, gets you down in the red zone. And it's been a drive where he's carried the lion's share of the carries. He's gotten the ball a lot of the time, and you need somebody to step in and make a play. I think that's an opportunity for Jordan James. Talked about the 31 touchdowns inside the red zone. Well, here's an opportunity for you to get Jordan James out there and allow him to make some plays. So I think that he goes there in that position, and that's his role. Some short yardage stuff as he develops into a third down, a guy that can play more on third down and gets better at pass protection because the technique is not always there. Sometimes his feet get a little bit narrow. He throws a shoulder sometimes. That's not going to work in the NFL consistently, so he's got to develop that area of his game. Then the 3 guys at the end is what's going to be interesting. I think going into training camp, you're probably going to see Patrick Taylor, then Abanikanda, then Corey Kiner getting the end of the reps. And because McCaffrey's not going to get a ton of reps in training camp, there's going to be plenty of opportunities for these guys to get carries. But Kiner's going to have to come in, and him and Jordan James will probably be at the end early. I think James is going to move up very rapidly because they want to get him ready for the season, and I think they're really high on him. But I think Kiner's going to have to come in there and compete with Abanikanda and Patrick Taylor, and all of them have unique skill sets, to what they could provide. So I think that Taylor is more going to be the veteran that you consistently count on when it comes to he's just going to do his job. Abanikanda and Corey Kiner are the guys who have more dynamics in their game. Abanikanda especially could be a whole shot guy, a breakout star, if he's able to put it together and run with consistency, being able to pick up what he's supposed to do. I am higher on Abanikanda than probably most, but that's because I did really like him coming out of Pitt. So I was a big fan of them picking him up last year off the waiver wire and coming in. And I think I see some dynamics when it comes to him catching the ball in the backfield, him being able to run in this system. I think he could show up and show out. I think that there's a good chance that when we get to the end of training camp, that Abanikanda and Corey Kiner are the ones competing for the job, and Patrick Taylor's kind of on the outside looking in because Abanikanda and Corey Kiner are young players. And so as long as those two guys can show up and show out on special teams as well, they're going to have an opportunity. Now, Abanikanda has an advantage. He played for Brant Boyer already at the New York Jets. So Abanikanda also is another guy that could be involved in the kick return duties as a guy that could go and do that for the 49ers. So different ways for these guys to be able to make the team. So that's how I think it looks going into training camp. How do I think it looks coming out? I think it's McCaffrey, Garendo, Jordan James, and Kyle Juszczyk, of course. I didn't even mention Juszczyk, but he's a lock, of course, to make this team. Then the battle between Patrick Taylor, Abanikanda, and Corey Kiner comes down to, number one, who they feel the most comfortable with. Number two, who they think they can get to the practice squad. So it could be one of those situations where they're afraid of losing Kiner, so they keep him on the team while allowing Abanikanda to kind of hit the waiver wire and try to get him to the practice squad. But I think Abanikanda is going to push this thing. I think it's going to come down to Abanikanda and Corey Kiner, and I think Patrick Taylor is going to be on his way out. And I think they'll try to bring him back if they can, because he doesn't have to clear waivers. So he could be one of those veterans that goes out and is able to decide, and the 49ers bring him back to the practice squad. So I think it's going to come down to Abanikanda and Corey Kiner, and I'm looking forward to it. Now, when it comes to tight end, we know who the number one tight end is in San Francisco, and that's George Kittle. And George Kittle is the bona fide, stud, the guy that just gets it done consistently. And the 49ers re-upped him on his contract. I'm sure he's feeling pretty comfortable. But George Kittle's never been the question mark when it came to the 49ers depth chart. It's consistently been the depth behind him. And it seems like the 49ers have never quite gotten the complete battery at tight end that they've been looking for. You've got George Kittle that can do it all. He's the best tight end in football because he can block like nobody else. He can catch the football and run after the catch like nobody else. He is just a special, special player. So with that being said, you've got to find the guys behind him. And the 49ers have found one or the other when it comes to those players, right? I mean, they brought in Charlie Warner. He was a 6th-round draft pick, and he became a blocking threat for the 49ers. And I would say probably one of the most valuable 49ers in the 2023 season. If you go watch what Charlie Warner did in that season, he was so impactful to making sure Christian McCaffrey was getting big-time carries. That's why last year the Atlanta Falcons during the offseason went and offered Charlie Warner a big contract. Now, the sad part is, you look at what the 49ers just gave Luke Farrell, they could have gave that to Charlie Warner, but they were trying to go a different direction, not spend with the blocking tight end and bring somebody in a little bit cheaper that they felt could probably do the same job. They also had drafted, right? They thought that maybe Braden Willis would be able to do it, or they had kept Jake Tunges. Maybe he was going to be able to do it. But no, it didn't work. And so they lose Charlie Warner, and this year they bring in Luke Farrell. And I think Luke Farrell is tight end too, but he's tight end too with the caveat that he's not going to catch the football for you consistently. The same way Charlie Warner would catch, an obligatory catch here or there, one catch for 2 yards, one catch for 5 yards every once in a while. That's what you're going to get from Luke Farrell. There's no yards after the catch. There's no receiving upside from Luke Farrell. It's not that he can't catch the ball, but that's not exactly what he's going to provide when it comes to skill set. This guy's going to be the guy that goes out there and does the dirty work. He's going to do the Charlie Warner role. He's going to be the guy that, is lined up off the ball and comes against the grain and traps a defensive end or wham blocks an interior defensive lineman. That's going to be his role within this offense. He's going to do some of the dirty work so George Kittle can be available to catch the football. So they did take care of tight end too, which is nice because you needed that. You didn't have it last year. You didn't have it at all. Eric Saubert just wasn't able to live up to expectation. And Charlie Warner set a high bar. Charlie Warner is probably the best blocking tight end, not named George Kittle, that the 49ers have had in a long time. I mean, Delaney Walker and Vernon Davis blocked pretty well, but I'm telling you, Charlie Warner was one of those guys. Now, the 49ers would have loved to have gotten a guy like Delaney Walker who could block that way and still be dynamic, and I think that's what they were looking for. But there hasn't been that player that's presented himself. They tried it with Cam Latu. He was a receiving threat potentially who could develop a big body. Didn't work. Braden Willis has never developed into that guy that they were hoping he was going to be at OU. Maybe this is the year. We're going to talk about him in a second. But they had to go Luke Farrell. Now, what do they do after that? Because after that, it's just young, right? until they brought in Ross Dwelly. It was Braden Willis, the former 7th round pick out of OU, who hasn't really developed. He looked like a passing threat at OU, a guy that people thought could be a move tight end, could block probably a little bit, on the edge and probably develop into more of a dual threat tight end. Hasn't developed, hasn't been good on special teams consistently. He just hasn't hit the way that I think they were hoping, and I think the way that 49er fans were hoping. We thought Braden Willis was going to be one of those guys. So far, it hasn't worked out. Then you got Jake Tunges, and it was a little bit of a shocker. I mean, especially for me, that Jake Tunges made the team last year. I felt that Jake Tunges did have some unique skill set that the 49ers might like. Number one, when he came into the league, he played for the Chicago Bears, made their 53-man roster. They played him at fullback. So as a guy that could play backup fullback, he seemed like a guy that was interesting for the 49ers, but I felt like he was interesting for the 49ers when it came to the practice squad. I didn't think anyone was going to, pick this guy up and keep him on their team for a 53-man roster. But the 49ers kept him as one of their tight ends, and that was a little bit shocking. Now, Jake Tunges didn't really do anything last year when it came to providing production on the field. Wasn't out there for very many snaps, wasn't really doing anything on special teams. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if they thought he was going to develop into a really consistent player. I know George Kittle really liked Jake Tunges. So he comes back, and what does that mean? Has he developed? Has this guy moved, his game to the next level? I think that's going to be something interesting to monitor when it comes to the tight end position. And then Mason Pline. Mason Pline is a guy that's, got a lot of development still with his game. He hasn't played football very much. He's tall, he's big, he's got some ability to catch the football, but every other element to playing tight end is what he's got to continue to develop. So Mason Pline is an interesting guy as well at the end of this roster. That's why the 49ers went out and got Ross Dwelly. Ross Dwelly left last year. They were going young movement. We talked about this. Saubert, Braden Willis, Cam Latu, Jake Tunges, Mason Pline. They were going to look to see to develop someone once Charlie Warner left. And Dwelly had struggled a little bit when it came to blocking and some of the things that he was doing. In 2019, you look and he was a successful move tight end, got vertical, made some catches, was a do-it-all guy. 2020 played in the backfield when Kyle Juszczyk was hurt. So he showed versatility. They bring him back because now they know at worst they've got a consistent player at tight end 3. And I've always said this. I'm okay with Ross Dwelly being tight end 3. I was just never okay with Ross Dwelly being tight end 2. And my concerns about it, though, is what are you doing when it comes to the pass-catching second tight end? Because we already established Luke Farrell is not going to be that guy. That's just not what he does. He might, catch the ball here and there. So it's going to fall on Ross Dwelly to be able to do that. When you go to 12 personnel, which is 2 tight ends on the field, it's going to fall on Ross Dwelly if it's some sort of a passing situation, and you've got to keep him off balance. So sometimes Farrell has to be out there for pass situations. Sometimes Dwelly has to be out there for run situations. You got to keep him guessing. But is Dwelly going to be able to make this team? I think the 49ers would love for Braden Willis, Jake Tunges, or Mason Pline to step up. And I've heard so much about Mason Pline, and I'm cautiously optimistic. This guy's still got a long way to go, guys. He did not take reps last year in the preseason, besides the last game of the season, last game of the preseason where he got in on special teams. He's had a full year to develop, so we'll see. I just don't know what we're going to get. I'm hoping we're going to get a better Mason Pline during training camp, but I think he's a long shot. Just to keep it real. I think right now, looking at the depth chart heading into training camp, it's Kittle, it's Farrell. I think it's Dwelly. Yeah, I think Ross Dwelly is ahead of Braden Willis, Jake Tunges, and Mason Pline heading into training camp. He understands what the 49ers want in the offense. He understands where he's supposed to get from point A to point B, what the blocking is supposed to look like. And I haven't seen anything from Braden Willis, Tunges, or Pline that says they're going to be a better blocker than Ross Dwelly. I haven't seen anything from Braden Willis, Jake Tunges, and Mason Pline that tell me they're going to be a better pass catcher than Ross Dwelly. I wish it was. It's just not. That's just what it is. I do believe the 49ers are still going to be looking for a potential move tight end, whether that's signing someone before training camp or waiting and see who gets cut before the season starts. I think there still could be a change at the position. I don't think they feel extremely comfortable. The other advantage that Ross Dwelly has is he's been a better special teams player than Braden Willis, Jake Tunges, and Mason Pline as well. So He's got all the elements captured. That's why I think he's that guy. After that, I think it is Braden Willis, then Jake Tunges, then Mason Pline. That's the depth chart heading into training camp. I think when we come out, barring something drastically happening, I think it's going to be George Kittle, Luke Farrell, and Ross Dwelly. I think Braden Willis, I think they let him go last year. He ended up on the practice squad. I think this year, Jake Tunges and Mason Pline, they do that as well. Pline last year cleared. I think as of right now, barring another signing, them bringing in someone pre-training camp or when the cuts happen, I think that Ross Dwelly is going to make this football team. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope Braden Willis steps up and shines. He's got the most ability. So we'll see. It's going to be interesting. But this is the depth chart for the 49ers at running back and tight end. I appreciate you all coming through and checking out the episode. Let me know in the comment section down below, which running backs do you think it is? How do you think it goes? Which tight ends? Are you with me with Ross Dwelly? I'm curious your perspective on it. Let me know in the comment section. I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you're listening on audio platform, 49ers Cutback on Believe Network. Please give it a 5-star rating. And, of course, this episode is brought to you by Bet Online. The game starts here. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Until then, stay safe. Remember, the right way is always the 49ers way.